So let's have a look at the module 3, right? And we're just reminding the persons that just joined, it is History Unit 2, paper 2019, right? Number 5, the following extracts relate to apartheid and the liberation struggle in South Africa. Study the extracts and then answer parts A to D that follow. So let's start with extract 1, the document. Black consciousness is an attitude of the mind and a way of life. The most positive call to emanate from the black world for a long time. Its essence is the realization by the black man that the need to rally together with his brothers around the cause of their oppression, the blackness of their skin, and to operate as a group to rid themselves of the shackles to bind them to perpetual servitude. Right? So this was Black Consciousness and the Quest for True Humanity by Steve Biko. Right? I did create like a video like this morning, right, explaining the contribution of multiple people to the movement, and Steve Biko was one of the persons, and I spoke about, right, his Black Conscious movement, the BCM, in that video. But let's have a go at what document 1's questions are. The reference to document 1, or with reference to document 1 rather, outline 3 apartheid laws that bound black South Africa, or black South Africans, to perpetual servitude. And I also posted a video earlier this morning outlining all the policies and laws, just saying, right, on my YouTube channel. But yeah, so what are the 3 laws? Give me 3. One person give me 1. Go ahead.
The Group Areas Act.
Okay, go ahead, tell me what that is about.
So it's basically restricting or segregating rather blacks from living in white designated areas.
So forcing these people to live into different townships. For example, the Orlando township that Nelson Mandela grew up in. Well, lived in. Right? So it started with the segregation of communities. Blacks were not able to live within white designated areas, and the blacks designated areas were continued to be policed and patrolled. So we could speak about it as a part of civil surveillance in a way. You gather up the blacks in large areas and droves and continue to police them. Sounds a little bit like the US, but we're not going to talk about it right now. Right? It's giving Boston. It's giving Boston, right? It's giving like Harlem, just saying, right? But it's something like that, right? Where they put them. Remember that it was a white minority, so they wanted to gather up all the blacks within one area where they could police them. And this type of policing is not regular police car, Military vehicles drove through these townships to keep the fear at a height, right? To keep them in check, to make them know from a young age that there's nothing they can do to stop the system of apartheid. As they make one move, there was just one man there ready to complete the job. Right? There was always some amount of policing. Right? So in order to escape, right, in curfews and stuff like that, it was almost impossible. That's why Nelson Mandela had to become the Black Pumpernickel. We'll soon talk about that. Alright? Anything else? Next law. Next law or policy? Next law? Go ahead.
Would the Bantu Building Workers Act be one? Could it be used?
With the use of perpetual servitude here, I would love to use a Bantu Education Act. Is that the same thing as the Bantu Education Act?
No. Okay, so the Bantu Building Workers Act was basically where blacks could not use skills that were undesignated for them. So they were designated skills that the blacks could and could not have, which was basically what the act was about.
Okay, so keeping them in positions that the whites wanted them in to make sure that they couldn't gain economic stability or any type of advantage within South African society, right? Okay, so you could state that. Could somebody give me the perspective of the Bantu Education Act? That work.
It was basically.
Go ahead.
So it's kind of similar to the act that she's talking about. It basically prepared Black South African children for traditional roles in society.
Mm-hmm.
And it restricted the amount of teachers to Black students.
As well as the resources that the schools had as well were terrible. Right? So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's caused schools, right? By the Bantu Education Act, Black schools, right? Were only teaching things that were not of much substance, that were used to keep them in a subservient role to the whites, right? And in order to facilitate that or to perpetuate that, the Workers Act, right, that you were stating a while ago for the Bantu, right, were another thing there. In order to make sure that you were only taught this at school, and to make sure that you were taught this, right, and could only use that thing that they taught you through that act, right, you were not allowed to do anything else but do that thing. So it's something like that. All right. So it kept them in a position of perpetual servitude. Anything else?
So I'm not sure if it would be used like would it be the terrorism, in that it kind of prohibited.
Is that the law?
Yeah, the Terrorism Act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it kind of prohibited anti-apartheid, like, so those who went against like the laws that were put in place, it was kind of put there to ensure that they did not go against the system. Would that kind of be a reason like why they were bounded to the apartheid laws?
That could be one. Mm-hmm. So if you tried to oppose, right, you were put down with brute force, basically, or it was illegal to oppose. So it kept them within perpetual servitude. All right, nicely done. With reference to document 1, explain 3 reasons for accrediting Steve Biko with helping to rid South Africans of the shackles of perpetual servitude. What were the contributions of Steve Biko? Go ahead.
So Steve Biko was mainly known for the Black consciousness movement. He was a key figure in that. Basically, the emergence of this organization would have raised political awareness amongst Black South African people, and it would have also fostered some type of unity amongst them. And the movement would basically be there to serve as a reminder that the apartheid law was not something that should be of importance to those Black people. Not saying that they should ignore it, but as in they shouldn't use it as a perspective of inferiority or anything like that. They should be able to uplift themselves. They should be aware of political happenings and develop certain strategies for like education and community.
Okay. So about one of the points that you stated there, even though politically and legally they're bounded to servitude, right? Steve Biko was played an integral part into making sure that, yet again, even though they're bounded legally and politically to servitude, that they're not mentally bounded to servitude, right? So it was a thing of making sure that South Africans maintain their mental freedom, right? While in the system of apartheid. Go ahead, somebody raise your hand.
So it's me again, right? I don't know if it can be attached or it can be a completely different point, but his death would have been something that basically acted as a catalyst for anti-apartheid movement.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the fact that they.
When did he die?
Huh?
When did he die?
I do not remember it.
1977.
But 1977.
Also?
Yes,
and yes, how did he die? How did he die is important as well.
He was brutally beaten to death.
By whom?
While incarcerated.
All right, by the police, right? And by the police is basically by the state, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, you can continue.
So this would have basically brought No, that's a totally different point. I'm going to leave that.
What would you call somebody like that whose death spark staunch movements or opposition to what that person stood for? Well, for what that person stood for. He was a martyr, right? That's what you call. Don't you call those persons a martyr?
Yes.
Yeah. So his death, right, signaled something. His death was a reminder of the South Africa that these people were living in. His death was a reason, right, to take more active approaches to being in opposition to the system. All right. Remember, was Steve a pacifist? Steve was a pacifist, right? Nobody? Was Steve a pacifist?
Yeah, he was. But he upheld the methods of Gandhi and Martin Luther King.
All right. So he was a pacifist. You're saying that this person doesn't do anything. The only thing that he wants to do is to write and to keep the spirits, right, of eventual freedom from apartheid alive, right? And the written word is sometimes more powerful than the actions that you would have, taken, right? So his words, right, would have, in the perspective of the South African government, poisoned the people against the government, right? Hope is an important thing for all of these things that we look at. History Unit 2 is about revolutions and drastic changes within society as the world becomes a modern place, right? So you have to understand how these societies change, right? And what were the key elements that changed these societies, right? And Steve Biko, right, enlightening the people of South Africa, keeping the hope of revolution alive, right? Keeping the destiny of one day a free and democratic South Africa alive was terrifying to the government of South Africa, right? Speak about these things and how Steve Biko's life represented something that the youth of South Africa could then take into their own hands, right? C. Let's look at what Winnie is saying up here. Together, hand in hand, with our matches and our necklaces, we still liberate this country. Winnie Mandela. The trial of Winnie Mandela, right? The trial, right? Wasn't this a court case? Let's look at this. With reference document to outline 3 contributions made by Winnie Mandela to the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa. It's again, I made a video that probably sums up all of this. But go ahead. Contributions of Winnie. Just say kind of sound weird. You guys know all the contributions of the men, but the one woman you don't know. It's giving sexism. Or the contributions of Winnie. Go ahead. Wow, what did Winnie do? Nobody knows. But what did Nelson do? Everybody knows.
Winnie she went to prison a lot.
That was her contribution. Yeah, she went to prison a lot, right? But that shows something. What was her contribution? Shows something about how she contributed. She went to prison a lot. What was her contribution?
She mostly focused on exposing South Africa's system of government.
Alright, so she worked on that. Anything else? Anyone else? I would like everybody to have something to say. If you like to participate, you can just say. Anyone else? Any other contribution? So she worked in exposing, right, the intricacies of the system that continued the apartheid struggle, right? So that continued the oppression of the people, right? So she exposes the government, and the government wouldn't particularly like that. Anything else that Winnie contributed? It's the way how everything was Steve do, everything roll off, but the one woman, no, absolutely not. Who is Winnie? I don't know. Is that happening? Anything else?
No.
So what is contribution of Winnie?
You know, she was a symbol. You know.
Listen to me. She was a symbol. Everybody here was a symbol. Right?
She was a symbol of
Desmond was a symbol. Sisulu was a symbol. Symbol of what?
Symbol of resistance. You know. As a woman. You know.
Okay, so she furthered the feminist contributions or the feminist opposition to apartheid. Exactly. Anything else? What was Winnie's approach? Winnie's approach was different from Nelson's approach. How was it different?
She was a woman.
No, we're not only.
More radical.
She was more radical.
Yeah, because not me saying his name before. Nelson practiced Marxism and Gandhiism. And the only reason they really had to like use more violent measures is because of the massacre that happened.
What is the name of the massacre?
But she was the one that was like,
you know, Maga asked what's the name? Sharpeville. When did Sharpeville massacre happen?
I'm not sure. I don't remember any details.
I made a video about that. I made a video about Sharpeville, the Dunbar strikes, as well as Soweto. It was what?
I'm saying every single time you're like, I made a video about that. I made a video about that.
I know. I'm joking. And it was this morning. But okay. When did Sharpeville happen?
1960.
That's only a question, but sure, alright. So in response to Sharpeville, Nelson became more radical, but you can continue. The person who was speaking. Go ahead. What are you saying about Winnie now? You said Nelson had to be more radical after Sharpeville, but what was Winnie like? You know that Winnie I think Winnie died in 2016? 2016, I think so. She died in 2016. But go ahead. She was more militant in her approach, right? She wanted a more, as you guys said already, the radical approach. She wanted to tear down buildings. She wanted to burn down police stations. She didn't want to sit down and negotiate. She wanted to go out, right? And take the freedom from the government, right? So she led marches. And she led sit-ins. Go ahead.
No, never mind.
You're saying that's why she got incarcerated a lot?
Yes.
Then why you said never mind? Alright, everything can be contributing. I want you to say what you have to say. Right? So we could speak about that. She led marches, she led sit-ins, she led protests, right? She sat with groups of people and groups of women and organized protests that were integral. Right? And she provided international responses to what happened in Soweto, right, and in Sharpeville, right? Her communication, her speeches, her protests were heard in Britain, in the United States, right, all across the world. Winnie was more vocal and more radical than all of the others, right? Yet we don't know what Winnie did. Come on now, right? We live in 2023. With reference to document 2, discuss 3 ways in which Winnie Mandela's involvement in the anti-apartheid movement was viewed as negative. Of course, it's the woman, so you have to view it as negative. But
okay, so first of all, there was a lot of controversy in her statements. So one of them, in particular, she made a statement where with our boxes of matches and our necklaces. So it kind of shocked the world at the time and tainted the image of the ANC, because when she's talking about like the necklaces, it's basically where you put I think it's a tire around like somebody and you basically douse it with like petrol and basically burn them alive. So it was very controversial. So that was one of them. Second of all, she was rumored to be linked to the Mandela United Football Club, which had been accused of basically going against human rights and abducting and murdering. So she it kind of tarnished her reputation as well, which affected the ANC, as well as she had allegations against her, not only for her association with the football club, but she faced allegations of basically abusing human rights, murder, one piece of baga something. Yeah. Right.
So you know everything was negative, but want to the contribution. All right, interesting. But yeah, it was really controversial, right? But know what you know, if white males had done this in other countries, I don't think it would be labeled as that controversial at the time, right?
Yes, it would. Oh, at the time. Oh, at the
At the
time.
time, at the time, context is key. Context is key, right? So at the time, but you know, Winnie being a woman and Winnie being black, right, taking this approach really shocked a lot of persons because they thought, you know, she would be docile and calm and everything, right? But she actually bought into racist ideologies that black women were angry and loud and manly and stuff like that, right? But she didn't care, right? She didn't care much about that, right? She wanted to make sure that apartheid ended and apartheid ended when she was alive. She wanted to make sure that apartheid did not continue, right? So she took that brash approach to apartheid. Yes, it was controversial. Yes, it was viewed as negative, but yes, it contributed to the end of apartheid in South Africa, right? So even though it was viewed as negative across the world, that negativity, right? Remember that negative news traveled faster than positive news, right? Within that negative news, right, the system of apartheid was exposed internationally. So even though it was negatively viewed, right, that aided what was happening in South Africa to spread across the world and powered international responses to apartheid. Right, so that's where the not taxations, the tariffs and the sanctions from Canada and the United States and just, well, I don't know if it's the United States, but I think Britain or India, no, Australia, it was Australia, right, that, you know, started to attack apartheid South Africa. Go ahead. Somebody raise your hand.
So I was saying that one way it could be her involvement could be viewed was divisiveness. So basically, because she was so radical and she had just such a strong personality, it caused some persons within the anti-apartheid movement to, you know, be divisive. In the sense that most of them wanted to use a non-violent approach, whereas she was radical. So you had some persons that were with her and some persons that were not.
Okay. Anything else, Dan?
No.
Okay. So everybody's good. Okay. So
Sorry, there was another point that said that with her involvement in like organizations that were corrupt, it kind of gave off the impression that she was using the whole anti-apartheid movement as a personal gain of power.
okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay, I guess that's it. Interesting. So let's have a go now. Discuss the extent to which the British government came into admission that reparations to its Caribbean colonies are due and just, as reported by the Moyne Commission. Go ahead.
This isn't really my topic.
Okay. Anyone else? No, there's no problem if it's not really your topic, but okay.
I think there is a problem for me because I had some topics that I said I wasn't going to do at all. And then the problem is, I don't know if the problem that I want to do is going to come as a document. And remember that we can only do one document. So then they're going to tell me to write an essay on something that I said I didn't want to do, or I'm not strong in.
Okay. Nobody. Okay, but nobody has an idea of what to write for this essay.
I don't think I really understand the question.
This was to which extent the British government came to an admission that reparations is, well, to its Caribbean colonies are due and just. What did the Mine Commission do? What was the Mine Commission? You see, because I know that your history teachers sat down and spoke to you about this and preached reparations, right? I would love to know what the Mine Commission did.
All right, so I don't have a lot, but one of the first things that came to my mind as probably a point was that all right, so to an extent, they're only willing to give an apology. They don't understand or they don't see how monetary compensation would basically solve the issue of like trauma or past grievances.
Wait, hold on. Oh yeah, continue. I think you're right. Go ahead.
That's all I have.
Anything else? To what extent did the British government came into an admission that reparation is to its current colonies are due and just? Nobody. Okay, the Mine Commission. What did they report? I don't think I personally remember all that they reported. Go ahead.
There, I think the Moyne Commission was sent by the British Parliament to the West Indies to look about the disturbances or report about the disturbances that was happening in the
Which
region.
disturbances?
So due to it was in the middle of World War II.
What's it called? 1930s disturbances you're talking about?
Yes, sir. I think it was that.
When did the Second World War begin?
1939.
1939. Everybody agrees? 1939? Where is everybody else? Did the Second World War start in 1939?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, as you were saying, Samara, okay. So it's not in World War II, but it was before World War II. So they were sent to. So it's the same 1930s disturbances with Cipriani and Bustamante and Norman Mandela and these persons. It was the same issue with these persons within the Caribbean. The revolts, well, sorry, not revolts. The protests in Guyana, in Trinidad, in Barbados, in St. Vincent, in Jamaica. Those you're talking about? I'm asking if it's those you're talking about. Those same ones?
So I'm not even sure myself. It's just the notes that I have. It just said that.
Okay. Okay, so what does the note say about the state of the Caribbean? Because they said the Mine Commission was sent to collect information. What did the Mine Commission see when they entered the Caribbean at this time? Because it's what the Mine Commission reported, would allow the British government to say, okay, due to these stats provided to us by the Commission, it looks like the Caribbean, may or may not need reparations. So it is tied to what the Mine Commission saw. Go ahead.
So is it the So sir, would it be like was it that many of them were in like poverty and unemployment back then, and the high rise of unemployment?
So unemployment as one. Okay, that could be one. Fantasia could go. Let me check the chat while Fantasia goes. You said after slavery, alright.
Sir, what diseases go on?
Diseases. Okay, so you could speak about the cholera epidemic and stuff like that. All right. Yeah, you could speak about the diseases that swept through the colonies. Go ahead, Fantasia.
So the Moyne Commission would have recognized that the British, while they were in the Caribbean, they dispossessed a lot of land, so there needed to be land redistribution or land reform.
Okay, so that was one. Okay. Okay, somebody said before, I'm not sure if it was you who said that the British only, the extent to which they believed that reparations were just and due was to just like do reparations to the form of apology and nothing more. So we're saying here the Minor Commission reported on all of these things and sent out. Well, we don't know if they skew the data, because whatever, all right? And they sent it to the to the British government, and they looked at all of the condition of the Caribbean people, and they looked at what happened after slavery, and they looked at the state of the economies of the Caribbean, and they decided that okay, an apology should be good enough. Right? So you're looking at to what extent the government came to admission here, right? To what extent did the government admit reparations, right? To the colonies were due and just. To what extent? Do the British government believe that they should send the money here? No, right? They believe in the fact that they should send an apology, right? So that is the extent, right? And we're going to have our essay around all of this, what was happening in the Caribbean at the time, right? We have to state the context, right? What happened in slavery? How that contributed to what was happening in the Caribbean at the time? Why the Moyne Commission was sent? What did the Moyne Commission report on? What was the British government's conclusion? Why was an apology alone given? That is the essay. To be very honest, I may sound like I'm versed in this topic, but I don't really know all of that, but okay. To be very honest, I don't really know all of that. Alright? It's kind of difficult to know the entire history syllabus, so right? That essay would never reach me. Never. Sorry about that. Alright, but yeah. That is what the essay should be about. Alright, because I am not touching that essay. Because if I touch that essay, alright, my grade probably drops off 6. No. Alright, so that is that, right? Okay.